Hundreds of thousands of tons of natural gas are leaking into the Baltic Sea after the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. And all fingers are pointing at Vladimir Putin. The Russian president stands accused of blowing up the underwater gas link between Russia and Germany with 2 explosions. It looks like another desperate throw of the dice as his armed forces take heavy losses in Ukraine and face the possibility of defeat.
What's up, everybody? First off, I gotta just jump in real quick. Dude, so they start talking about how it was possibly a submarine, and they show fucking Putin in it, like somehow like it was him who actually did it. Are you fucking kidding me? Crazy ass shit. But hey, it's your boy Swervin of Swervin Media. Let's get back into this pipeline shit. Please like and subscribe.
Why blow up their own pipelines if they can obviously just cut off the gas flowing from them?
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies. We're going to work with our allies to get to the bottom of exactly precisely what happened. And at my direction, I've already begun to help our allies enhance the protection of this critical infrastructure.
So I know with everything that happens in the 24-hour news cycle, it's really hard to focus in on one thing. There's just always some kind of craziness happening somewhere. But I think it's a good time to reflect on, just look at what he said right there. Let's keep going into it.
These actions from President Putin signal very clearly that he knows he is losing. He's on his back heels, and he's making every attempt to intimidate those who would stand up to him.
Do you think Russia's behind the sabotage of the pipelines?
Well, I think all the signs point to some type of sabotage. These pipelines are only in about 200 feet or so of water, and Russia does have an undersea capability that would easily lay explosive devices by those pipelines. And I do think it's a signal to Europe that Russia can reach beyond Ukraine's borders. So who knows what he might be planning next? But I think this is clearly an act of sabotage of some sort, and Russia is certainly the most likely suspect.
Well, Willie, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has called it sabotage. We don't have definitive intelligence information yet on what caused this subsea pipeline to rupture and to begin to leak methane up into the atmosphere. But it is likely that this is an act by Russia. I think that we've seen over and over Vladimir Putin use energy as a weapon against the West to try and undermine NATO's unity in the face of his brutal invasion of Ukraine.
Russia has always thrived on creating chaos and doubt within the West.
So over the years, and the more I've paid attention to politics and watching these fools do their shenanigans, I've always felt that whatever they accuse their opposition of is what they're doing. And I think this is just such a clear example of how true that is, because it's all we ever hear about is if it's not anything domestic, it's Russia, the evil Russians, Russia, oh, the bad Russians. And it's like, all right, guys, let's just relax a little bit. And it's just all I can think about is how everybody was just so sure that this was definitely something that Russia would do. Yeah, Russia's just gonna go and blow up their shit. Like some good old sabotage, dude. Nothing like some good old sabotage during a fucking war economy to really spice things up, It's just definitely economically and just geopolitically, it's probably the smartest thing you can do is blow up your own shit. So
Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. I promise you we'll be able to do it.
Using a NATO military exercise as cover, planted mines along the pipeline that were later detonated remotely. The bombing of the Nord Stream underwater gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea was a covert operation ordered by the White House and carried out by the CIA, a report by a veteran investigative journalist claims. And we all knew that anyway, because it was bloody obvious. Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, has claimed that US deep-sea divers using a NATO military exercise exercise as a cover, planted mines along the pipelines that were later detonated remotely. Once hailed the greatest American investigative reporter, Hirsch, 85, who broke stories such as the mass murder of 500 civilians at My Lai in Vietnam and the torture of prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, said that the Black Op was ordered by President Biden and that the attack was carried out by the CIA in cooperation with Norway. Times revealed that German investigators remained open to theories that a Western state carried out the bombing with the aim of blaming it on Russia. Do you reckon? Vyacheslav Volodin, the chairman of the Russian State Duma, said the published facts should become the basis for an international investigation. He also said the United States should pay compensation to countries affected by the terrorist attack. It seems outrageous to hear a Russian diplomat say that this is an act of terrorism, but if that balloon flying above the United States is regarded as an infringement, an invasion, an act of terror.
Shout out to Russell Brand. I've been loving watching him over the last couple of years. He's really been doing some great work. And that is just the best point ever right there. Look how we reacted to the balloon up in the sky. And, like, we go over into waters that are not ours and fucking blow shit up and then blame the fucking people. Like, but then if a balloon flies over here, dude, we're all like, oh, Mr. High and Mighty. It's like, make it make sense.
The sabotage of the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back and forth debate inside Washington's national security community about how to best achieve that goal. For much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible.
So these people, they have no shame. They just go out there and lie, like how they do it, and literally like set up an operation to go blow up some shit. And then blame it on the country whose shit you just did it to. And just go out in front and day by day just be like, oh yeah, we're investigating this. We're looking into this. This was some sabotage. This is some good old-fashioned Russian tactic.
Divers were Navy only, and not members of America's Special Operations Command, whose covert operations must be reported to Congress and briefed in advance to the Senate and House leadership, the so-called Gang of Eight. The Biden administration was doing everything possible to avoid leaks as the planning took place late in 2021 and into the first months of 2022. Team, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Secretary of State Tony Blinken, and Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State for Policy, had been vocal and consistent in their hostility to the two pipelines, which ran side by side for 750 miles under the Baltic Sea. From the direct route, which bypassed any need to transit Ukraine, had been a boon for the German economy and enjoyed an abundance of cheap Russian natural gas, enough to run its factories and heat its homes, while enabling German distributors to sell excess gas at a profit throughout Western Europe. Action that could be traced to the administration would violate US promises to minimize direct conflict with Russia. Secrecy was essential. America's political fears were real. Putin would now have an additional and much needed major source of income. Nord Stream 1 was dangerous enough in the view of NATO and Washington, but Nord Stream 2, whose construction was completed in 2021, would, if approved by German regulators, double the amount of cheap gas that would be available to Germany and Western Europe. The second pipeline would also provide enough gas for more than 50% of Germany's annual consumption. Tensions were constantly escalating between Russia and NATO, backed by the aggressive foreign policy of the Biden administration. Opposition to Nord Stream 2 flared on the eve of the Biden inauguration in January 2021, when Senate Republicans led by Ted Cruz of Texas repeatedly raised the political threat of cheap Russian natural gas during the confirmation hearing of Blinken as Secretary of State. A few months later, as the construction of the second pipeline neared completion, Biden blinked. That May, the administration waived sanctions against Nord Stream AG, with a State Department official conceding that trying to stop the pipeline through sanctions and diplomacy had always been a long shot. Behind the scenes, administration officials reportedly urged Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, by then facing a threat of Russian invasion, not to criticize the move. Natural gas prices surged 8% within days, amid growing fears in Germany and Europe that the pipeline suspension and the growing possibility of a war between Russia and Ukraine would lead to a very much unwanted cold winter. Throughout all of this, Russian troops had been steadily and ominously building up on the borders of Ukraine, and by the end of December, more than 100,000 soldiers were in position to strike from Belarus and Crimea. Alarm was growing in Washington, including an assessment from Blinken that the troops' numbers could be doubled in short order. The administration's attention once again was focused on Nord Stream. As long as Europe remained dependent on the pipelines for cheap natural gas, Washington was afraid that countries like Germany would be reluctant to supply Ukraine with the money and weapons it needed to defeat Russia. It was at this unsettled moment that Biden authorized Jake Sullivan to bring together an interagency group to come up with a plan. All options were to be on the table, but only one would emerge. Biden and Nuland's indiscretion, if that is what it was, might have frustrated some of the planners, but it also created an opportunity. According to the source, some of the senior officials of the CIA determined that blowing up the pipeline no longer could be considered a covert option because the president just announced that we knew how to do it. The plan to blow up Nord Stream 1 and 2 was suddenly downgraded from a covert operation requiring that Congress be informed to one that was deemed as a highly classified intelligence operation with US military support. Under the law, the source explained there was no longer a legal requirement to report the operation to Congress. All they had to do now is just do it, but it still had to be secret. Asked at a press conference last September about the consequences of the worsening energy crisis in Western Europe, Blinken described the moment as a potentially good one. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant, and that offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come, but meanwhile we're determined to do everything we possibly can to make sure the consequences of all this are not borne by citizens in our country, or for that matter, around the world.
I don't want them to have that, so we gotta figure out a plan to fucking make sure that it does not work. And it's just like, it sucks. I hate that our world has to be like this. Like, I mean, like, peace seems much easier than war. I don't know. Is that a crazy thought? Is that a bad, horrible take? Peace seems easier than war?
I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
Hearing stuff like this, and how they don't have to tell Congress because they already spoke it, it's just like, none of that stuff seems right. And the fact that they just go and enter themselves into shit when they have no, like, what are we doing, dude? Like, why are these people doing this shit? Why have we let this go on for so long? Like, why are these people, like, I don't understand it. Like this whole fucking system and everything is so backwards. I mean, you guys are the fucking green people, dude. You are all about climate change and shit, but then you go and blow that shit up. That just goes to show their hypocrisies, dude. It's these same motherfuckers who be flying on jets and then preaching down to us saying you should not own a car and you should do rideshare because it's fucking better for the earth. But we're gonna go blow up other countries' shit who, you know, they don't want to follow our way, so we're gonna go force it on them. And it's that whole force thing. See, that's where I have an issue with things. Generally, I don't really give a shit, you know what I mean? Do what you want to do. But it's when you're imposing your shit onto other people, that's where I have a problem with it. And it's when you're forcing stuff. There's just so much corruption, dude. And I guess that's the name of the game, though. Maybe the whole game is, dude, you gotta figure out a way to fucking corrupt. You gotta figure out a new corruption strategy, dude, and then you can be a billionaire and you can go blow up pipelines with American Navy SEALs and the CIA and go do badass shit. And then maybe one day you can have a son who does a bunch of drugs and fucks hookers, and while he's smoking crack, you're putting into law, if you get caught with a 5-sack of crack, you go to jail for 5 years. Meanwhile, your son's a fucking idiot. So, it's just such a good example of how, please don't ever listen to those people on the media, ever. Because look how much fear and they put out there and bullshit and crisis. And then they just flat out lie. They don't tell stories, they tell narratives. They push narratives because they have agendas. What they say is not the truth. And it needs to get called out. So far, only I've seen Russell Brand really be talking about this, and then Redacted. They're a great show too. But besides that, you're not really seeing too much on YouTube. And it's bad, dude, because I mean, we're such a culture of like outrage. But I swear, I mean, not to belittle anybody's stuff, but we get real upset about some stuff that doesn't really seem too important, like on the grand scheme of things. But then shit like this happens, and we're just like, oh yeah, but you know, they said like it was a good thing. Like, dude, Russia's really bad, dude. Like, Russia, dude, they're really bad. Volodymyr. But, yo, man. I hope you enjoy watching this as much as I enjoy making it. And, hope I brought you a smile. It's hard to smile during these times because, you know, times is hard out here. But, you know, we just do what we do to get by, you feel me? But anyways, that's it. Please like and subscribe. I'm almost at 100,000 views, and I'm almost at 100 subscribers, so help me get to that mark. It'd be much appreciated. All right, y'all. Peace.